because I'm really into like American Idol and when the Olympics were on, and those stories were, and they always go into these backstories of adoptions,
Yeah.
and
Oh,
I owe my life to this person who took me in and, raised me as their own, and they really are the most beautiful stories.
they are.
So, and I really connect with them. And, talk about the smile. My dad and we had a picture of me and a picture of him, and we had the exact same smile.
Oh,
So
I love that.
we both had like this, one-sided smile, and it was both on the same side. So
Uh,
I still
oh,
keep them together because it just means so much to me that even though he was gone when I was 11 years old, so much of him still lives inside of me.
oh, definitely. Yeah, that's so special. And I love that. Like it's like you said, like hearing adoption stories, hearing success family stories, creating
Yeah.
new families, bigger families. I follow these people that foster to adopt on social media, and I'm just like so like I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's so beautiful. They have like three different Santas to make sure that each of their children's races are represented within
Oh, that's
Santa.
so
And I'm
cool.
just like, oh my gosh, like they're just thinking so deeply about what their children need and want. And even if their children aren't asking for it, they're thinking so deeply about like, what can I do to connect with my child so that they feel connected with our
That's
family? And I'm like, oh yes, like
that's so awesome.
it is. It's beautiful. How do we do that? Like it's and we're all trying to figure
Yeah.
it out. Like you said, we could be doing it all wrong, but it's like we're trying our best, and that's all we can do. And I absolutely love that. And even just like on social media with my books, like just being out in the world, putting that positivity, putting those stories out there, just reinforce that and just help so much. Because I know people have traumatic stories and hard stories. And there's adoptees out there sharing their stories saying that adoption is these terrible things. And it is terrible what these people go through. And there is a light and a dark. There is a bad and a good. There's
Yeah.
always bad people in the world. There's always bad things happening, but there's
Yeah.
also good, and that can't be forgotten and that can't be overshadowed by these things.
Absolutely.
Sharing
Adoption is a good thing.
it
Yeah.
is. It's a
It,
good thing. It's a good intent. It's a good love. It's good to make families. And I see stories of 16, 17-year-olds about to age out, and your heart just breaks because you're like, who are they gonna go home to? Like what's gonna like you just start having all of these thoughts like as an adoptee. I'm like, well, what would have happened? Like,
I used to work at a shelter for kids who were abused. I ended up having some at my house for Christmas and things like that. I mean, it was a really great experience, but I felt really bad for them. And one of them showed up on my doorstep when he did age out. I mean, he was 18, he had nowhere to go. I mean, lots of times back then, and it might be different now. I'm not really sure, but the shelter door opens, you're 18,
yeah.
bye.
Hmm.
And they still don't have anywhere to go. So there were a lot of gaps back then, and I hope that they have more services now for kids that because they have no skills, a lot of
Yeah.
them, and most people rely on their parents to help them to that next step.
Yeah.
We all do.
Oh,
And
yeah,
just because
college
you're
tuition,
18,
jobs, helping even write a resume, getting a resume, planning for that, having
mhm,
internships. I worked at my mom's job over the summer. I'd help, file paperwork at my dad's. I mean, these
yeah,
are little things, but they prepared me for the workforce. They prepared,
absolutely.
boosted my resume, spell check,
All those little things.
all those little things that end up being the big things that create home and create families. And when a child doesn't have that and they age out, it's an unimaginable loss for people who do not have the family to come home to, the mom to call when they're having a hard day, the dad to lean on.
That's it. That's it.
They
Yeah.
don't have, I mean, I know they have each other, and I know I've seen a lot of these children who do age out, they really stay connected to their foster siblings and to other children, and they band together, and that is their family. And I mean, they've
Hmm.
created that,
Yeah.
but they
Their
deserve
own family.
more. They deserve that mother, father figure, that mom figure, dad, aunt, uncles. I mean, every child deserves that. They deserve to be tucked in at night. They deserve to know where home is.
Okay.
It's
I say all the time, family is not blood.
it's not. Oh my gosh. If it was, I mean, then oops.
I want to talk a little bit about my kids just for a
Oh,
couple minutes. I mean, I knew
oh, I'd
the
love to.
moment that I held my youngest son that he was mine. Before he was mine officially, I knew he was. It was just this innate feeling. And I mean, there is nothing like seeing your child and knowing this child is mine,
Mm,
no matter how old they are, really. And I don't think that you can explain it if you've never experienced it. I say that because I say all of this because he was born and handed to me.
mm,
I didn't get him until he was 2 months.
wow.
I still really just knew that this was going to happen. That bond was just established, like
Hmm.
right there. Now, my older ones, they took time because 4 and 3, and then my other one was 18 months, and my other one was a nonverbal, almost 4-year-old.
Mm,
And it takes more time for that to happen. Did I know and did I love them just as much? Yes. But
mhm,
on their end, I knew that there was a lot coming in. And you have to be a lot more cautious in how you handle the child that is being adopted and coming into your home. I can remember, and this is really funny, my now 29-year-old, the one that I'm mom and that's it. Um, she was so funny. We had just gotten her and she was playing in the other room. And I was in the kitchen. She runs up to me and she says, "You took me without saying please." And I said, "Well, will you please live with us? Will you please let me be your mom?" And she just went, "Yep." And then she ran off and played.
I love that.
It was so funny.
I love that. Have you seen the movie Instant Family with Mark Wahlberg?
No, I have not.
Okay, this is something that I'm going to recommend to any adoptee, adopter, adoptive family connect. It is a true story about a couple who adopted three children out of foster care, a teenager and two younger children. And you had this mom moment, I remember you were saying with your dad, and they had that depicted in the movie where the little girl walks up to her foster father and says, "Can you help me with my dolly? My dolly needs help." And he helped her. And she said, "Thanks, Daddy." And
Oh,
both parents looked at each other, and the mom followed her and said,
there's
"I
that
want
mom.
some of that. Do you need any of it?" And it's so real. I showed my mom, and my mom's like eyes were watering the whole movie where she's like, it's so real. The issues you
Yeah.
have, like, an older child wanting to paint their room black. It's like, okay, not what I would have thought, but that's you. Like, go do it, whatever works. And it's like
Yeah.
the first time
Mm.
disciplining your child, especially when they're a little older. It's like, I don't want them to hate me, but also I need to discipline them because that's my job as their parent is to teach them right and wrong. And I have to do these things, and it's hard, and you have self-doubt. And my mom told me one time that parents of a child came in and he was 13 and they said, "Our child hates us. He says he wished he was never adopted. What do we do?"
Ooh.
And
Yeah.
she said, "I was not adopted, and I always told my parents that I wish I was."
That's awesome.
She said, "Some days your teenager's not going to like you, and that's okay."
It's
She said,
true.
"That's normal parenting."
Mm-hmm.
He's like, "I did not like my parents, and my parents were not my adoptive parents." She goes, "That's normal. It's normal for your child to have questions and to use buttons that they have. And his button is the adoption button. So that's going to be used some days when he's really mad because he doesn't want to do his homework or clean
Yeah.
his or he's grounded from playing video games. It's okay." And it's like it's validating that feeling of it's okay to be scared and you're
Mhm.
his mom and dad. It's okay. Like you have a very normal mother-son relationship. And some days it's really hard.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard the words
Hmm.
from one of my kids, older kids, well, you're not my mom,
Hmm.
and those are words that really sting.
Hmm. Oh, I'm guilty of saying those words as an adolescent, and I've apologized profusely to my mom for those now as an adult. And she would say, "Well, I knew I was. So that was a me thing that I had to work out, and I had to be secure enough to really, take it, because there were going to be days that were hard for you, and you were young and you had big emotions and big words, and I, to this day, am still in awe that she took those, because they were such blows, I know, to her and to my dad. And I had I had a lot of issues, like you were saying, like similarly, where I dropped out of high school. I did took random paths that weren't safe. I did bad
Yeah.
things. I did all the stuff. I lived a very full young life. And I'm very grateful that I came out of the other side safely and healthy without a rap sheet.
I say that too.
Yeah.
And I did all the twists and turns and went on a lot of roads I should not have. And I don't know, this is an interesting conversation actually, because I know a lot of adoptive feel it doesn't matter when you've been adopted. I
Mhm.
wonder if there is like this little thing that we feel, that connection, that little gap that happened in our life
Mhm.
that takes us down that avenue. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. I have friends who are adopted who've definitely done very straight, narrow, what the kind of expectation
Okay.
of adolescence was, but I've also seen a lot of individuals who really are eccentric with their choices of young young life. And I don't know, I don't know what to expect with my own children. I'm assuming they're gonna kind of run wild similarly to my husband and I don't know if that's biological or if they're just being nurtured by people who did that. But I think that no matter what, when you're being raised, whether it's your biological parents or your adoptive parents, I think there's always this feeling of, have I been doing what they want me to do, or am I doing what I want to do? And so sometimes, especially with adoption, we have that, I wonder who I would have been. I wonder what would have happened. I need to find myself a little bit more and go off the deep end occasionally. But again, having those parents who are in your corner, having your mom, having your dad in your corner, unlike those children that age out, to be there as your safety net, and almost knowing that it's like, I can only explain it as like you're just testing boundaries where you're like, do you still love me if I do this? Will you still be my parents if I do that? And having that almost reassurance, and then getting through it, you're like, okay, I can literally do just about anything and I can still come home because you're mom and dad. And so maybe it's that.
It's another level of finding ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
I think. And I think with the adoption process, we are trying to find ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and there is an identity and all those things that come with it, and who am I? But yeah, I think that that adds a more complex level, I
Yeah.
guess you can say, on trying to find ourselves. And it also depends on when you were adopted.
Yeah. That
So,
the
I mean,
experience you had before your adoption,
absolutely.
baggage you bring with you, the stories, the connections. I know people who were adopted a little bit older and they have foster siblings that they still are connected with today, and they're
Right,
adults and they were adopted by different families. They had different situations, but they stayed pen pals, video chats. I mean, they were, for lack of a better word, siblings their entire life, just raised by different parents at that point because they had
right.
such a strong connection as young children in foster care.
So when you sat down, I mean, what made you just say, you know what? I am going to write this book for the masses you have such a beautiful adoption story.
Hmm.
So what made you want to do that and spread this for all? Because one of my favorite parts is that you do get to write your own story. In fact, I think I'm going to do that with my kids.
We've added 10 more pages to that, so it's much longer
Oh,
because I didn't, once I got the first copy, I'm like, oh, we need to add like at least 10 more. So it's much longer now. My first book I wrote was First Night, and it was about my connection to my biological children. Um, and that was really special to me, and it was a connection that I had with my daughter while she was sleeping on my chest. And my mom was actually here, and my daughter would not settle for her. And I was trying to do dishes or anything else not baby related because I was burnt out. And I remember walking in the room, picking her up from my mom, and she immediately settled. And my mom said, oh, she knows your heartbeat. That's what she knows. She knows you,
hmm
your mom. And I
hmm
remember thinking to myself, did my mom have that experience? Or, because she was mom from day one, but was that a fear that she had that she wouldn't be enough even for the infant
Mm,
baby, that the smell wouldn't be the same, that the heartbeat, were those thoughts that she had.
mhm,
So when I wrote First Night, I knew that I wanted to write another book that depicted my story, but I wasn't an adopted parent, so I sent this out. It probably took me this whole year. I've been doing research and connecting with people and figuring out the art. And originally, the cover was going to be three hands of different races making the adoption symbol. And I was talking to my artist about it, and actually the front cover was on the internal pages. And when we came up with the sketches and she sent me the first copy of everything, I said, oh, this needs to be the cover. That's the cover. And so we completely
mhm.
changed it because I said, I want children to see this book and say, that's me. That's me. That's my sister. That's my brother. That's what mommy
Right,
looks like. That's what daddy
right,
looks like. And I really wanted that to encompass every child, not just three different skin tones or three different age groups. So we really tried hard because I wanted to share it with all of my friends and family who are adopted. And I had to figure out a way, how do I do this? How do I make it so that more stories are spoken for, are said, are advocated for? And this was how. And I remember talking to my mom, and we talked about the journeys that she went through and how they had a very short journey, but they were trying to adopt from Asia at the time. And they had said there was a
mhm,
5-year waiting
mhm,
list, so they were prepared for that. And
mhm.
so I remember I'm dyslexic, so I'm very visual. And so I remember visualizing this path where the forest is just full of clocks because you have no idea. And you're kind of going down this path where you have no idea where it's going to take you. It maybe feels a little bit scary, and it's just there's no amount of time. You never know. Like you said, you held your baby and then it was 2 months and then it took 8 years, and it's hard, and it's this path that's traveled. And so everything really allowed for analogies where there's a boat and a plane and hiking and a train. And it's like, some people it's just flying down to Florida to meet an Olive Garden. Other people it's flying around the world and taking buses through unknown areas that they've never been to meet their children. And so allowing for those stories and to create those analogies. And I remember the handprint one was really difficult for me because I said, how do I create an imagery that is a more perfect laugh? Like, how do I visualize a laugh? And it's like, what do you do with your kids about laughing? You're doing art with them, you're playing with them, you're getting dirty and muddy and getting fingerprints everywhere. And so we had that page of kids can see their hands, and it again allows just for any child of any age, because every parent I know has taken their kids' handprints, has done their footprints, have done
Right.
fingerprinting, and it's as universal as we could do on a paperback book from Amazon. But I have so many.
Very beautifully illustrated.
Yeah, I absolutely love my artist. I've used her for 5 out of my 6 books, and we're continuing to work together on other books. And we visualize each other so well, and we can
That's
just really
awesome.
bounce off of each other. And she has a special connection to adoption, and so it really was a special book for both of us.
Well, it is very special because I think adopted kids are very special.
Oh, definitely.
And I mean, come on.
We are.
And
We
we
were
are.
chosen.
Yeah. This is really funny a little bit about choosing because our caseworker sat down with us and painted this absolute worst case scenario. We're sitting in front for the first time wanting to be parents, and they have you go to parenting classes and all these things. And it almost feels like they're trying to talk you out of it in a way because they're like, well, you could end up with kids who are, and just the worst. And they could have alcoholism in their background and all these different things. And I'm just sitting there and I'm, okay, okay, all right. And then she says, are you still sure that you want to do this? And I'm like, well, if they were born from me, they would have the same background. So what's the difference?
I know. That's like the craziest thing is like I've asked people where I'm like, are you what your parents wanted you to be and you're biological? Like I know. I know plenty of people who are biological children and they are not at all, dad's a lawyer and now child is an artist and dad doesn't approve. And it's
Exactly.
like, you don't
Yeah.
know. You never know what you're going to get. at all. Like there's no, you might get them a little bit older, but you don't know. You have no idea. I love my children and I can only hope. I always say that I want them to live a life worth living. And I
Mm.
have no idea what that looks like. Right now, a life worth living to my children are dinosaurs and Hulk. And that is what they love. And
Oh, if life could always be like that.
exactly, if it could only ever be that simple. And also
Ugh.
ibuprofen for all of the ear infections. But, you know,
Mm.
that's all I could want for them. So it's like, do you hope they do this? Do you want them to do this? It's like, I hope they're happy. I hope they're completed. I hope they find love. I hope they love
All
themselves.
the things. Yeah.
All the things. Like if they
Yeah.
want to do whatever, I hope they're safe. I hope they're loved. I hope they're living this amazing life that they love. And I will be proud of them. Like I am proud mama. Like
Oh, me too. My one son, who he has so many challenges. Yeah, there's a lot there. And I feel really bad for him, honestly, because he struggles so much. But we believe in exposure, just
Mhm.
everything. And he's 11, but he's emotionally probably like 5.
Mhm.
But he can drum. And he just performed last weekend with the quads. And he's up there just bam, 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 and I am the biggest, proudest mama. I am just so happy for him because he said the words, it makes me feel important. There it is.
That's it. That's all you want for your children. That's it.
I know. And that's why your books really resonated with me. And we don't have to have the same genetics for a child to get into our soul. I
Mm-mm.
think that that's why this was so personal to me when I was reading your books. It actually, I sat with them for a while because they hit me so deeply. And plus, I love children's books and I actually gravitate to them when I'm in a bookstore. There's nothing like the pictures and the storytelling of it in childlike form for
Mhm.
me
Yeah.
anyway. And I think a lot of adults could admit that too, because I love reading to my kids. I just love the children's books.
Yeah. I love reading to them. I love being inspired by them. I mean, a boat in the kitchen. We literally had a boat in a puddle in the kitchen and I was walking around and I have a piece of paper where I was scribbling down things that I was seeing while I was cleaning up and
Saw that.
I just was like, this is what they see. And it's like, how do we create this mundane thing like picking up after our kids at night when everyone's asleep? And we start thinking, like, do they see like this huge tugboat in the kitchen? Do they see a cow with socks flopping over their ears because there's a cow in the laundry basket? I
Yeah.
remember as a kid with my dollhouse. I mean, I thought of my dollhouse as this huge thing that was different stories and each room was different. And now looking at like these dollhouses, I'm like, oh, they're like this big. Like they're so tiny. But as a kid, they're life size. There's worlds going on that we don't see as adults. And so appreciating that imagination and then also talking to your kids and making it into fun of like, well, what do you see? What is there a shark in our bathtub right now? Like, is it taking a bubble bath with you? Do you have a full-size shark hanging out with you? Is there a scuba diver going on? Like, are they searching
Mhm.
for lost treasure under the bubbles? Like,
That's so cool that you're trying to see it from their perspective and talking about a boat in the kitchen. We clean up. I've never looked at it that beautifully
Mhm.
or that much. You just put it on paper. So cool. It's like you're really experiencing it in a completely different way. I think because of that book, I will clean up and look at it differently.
It's really fun because we have an elf in our house right now,
Mm.
named Opie. And so I like to remember how my children see him and what he's doing and all of the mischief that he gets into in our house. And it really does kind of put us into a little child role of like remembering this little magic that happens in our house. And so sometimes, you get exhausted, you get overwhelmed, you get overstimulated, and that's really like the all out of ducks book. But you remember like, okay, like they're seeing this whole world. So when they want to play, it's not they want to play with this little stuffed animal. They want to play with a donkey. And they want
Mm.
you to eat all like a donkey and they want you to neigh like a horse because you are the horse and they have a farm in their bedroom and we live, on a ranch and that's what we're doing right now. And To them, that is the playtime. That is the world. We're not sitting here in our 3-day-old sweatpants with our 5-day-old unwashed hair. We
Hmm.
are the animals that we're playing. And so, how do we try and remember that, on the exhaustion days, on the days that are just overstimulating and just, like your son saying that he felt important when he was drumming. It's like he was center stage with his drums. It's like that
Hmm. Hmm.
that's a core memory right there. He's going to have that the rest of his life. And
Hmm.
it's like larger than life moments. And they can happen in your kitchen.
Apparently,
Yeah.
because, because I've honestly never looked at some of the things that you have looked at in such a childlike way. So that was so well done. I want
Thank
to
you.
talk about Melanie. It is so good. And I'm dyslexic. You say that you have dyslexia. So thank you for this book because Melanie is a beautiful story of how our differences can be our superpowers.
Yeah.
And I talk about that all the time here. We talk about superpowers. I think it's an autism thing, I'm not sure, but how you can just take all of our differences and make them our strengths, and this is a picture book to support each young reader in their own journey to self-confidence, pride, and compassion. I read your blog
Hmm.
on sashasaidman.com, and you write a letter to yourself,
I do.
and you say, as I've been discussing my most recent book, Melonade, a lot of memories and big emotions have come back to me from my childhood. So I wanted to write a little note to my younger self. Dear younger self, which I think is amazing, by the way, that you did this. You just love taking the road less traveled, don't you? You're strong-willed, you're kind, you're compassionate, you're artistic, and you're going to be okay. When I read that, I sat in that for a minute or more
Hmm.
because what I would have done, what I need to do is go back to that 11-year-old and say, you know what? You're going to be okay.
I think a lot of us need that and would benefit from that. And I think that if we can take those moments when they feel really heavy and
Mm,
look at the really big picture of how far we've come and everything we've been through and try and look at it as a half full moment of every trauma, every hard moment, every completely heart-wrenching moment is something that
mhm,
taught us something, that gave us strength, that made us dig ourselves out of these holes that sometimes we dug for ourselves and sometimes we fell miles into, I think is really important. And so talking to my younger self and being like, we made it, we're okay. Like it's okay that we went through these things because that's how we became the person we are today. And that's how we're able to parent and how we're able to be a friend and a partner and a spouse. And those experiences really made us. That's again, the nurture part,
mhm,
our life, our world that has been created around us, created
mhm,
us today. And
mhm,
we can look at ourselves today and say, I'm really proud of who we are. I'm really proud of the family that we're creating and the life that we're creating for our family and ourselves. That's a really powerful thing. And so remembering that and being like, it's okay. It's okay that all the spills, all the times that you feel like it's just too heavy and too much, like it's
mhm,
okay. Like you're gonna have those. And there's also gonna be these really beautiful moments, like when you hold your son for the first time, or you
mhm,
watch your son on stage drumming and feeling
mhm,
full. Like those are it's worth it. Like it's so hard to say when you're in those moments, but it is worth it. I wish I could have been there just to give myself a hug and, just be like, it's cool. Like we got this. Like you're
yeah,
so
yeah, you
strong.
got this.
Like you're so strong-willed. Probably won't believe me, but
Yeah, when you're talking about the adoption story
Mhm.
and you have the pages that are blank, it really doesn't matter how you start.
Mhm.
It really, it's a beautiful story. But even if we're adopted or if we're not adopted and we're going to be okay when we're older, we can rewrite those pages. It's all about rewriting, and we can become whatever we want to be. And I think adoption gives us such a great chance
Yeah.
in life. It can. I mean, not
Oh,
for everybody, but it can. And I always call them mile markers where something in our life has drastically changed, good or bad, but we're not going back.
hmm.
This is who we are now, and
Yeah.
we're moving forward. And that space and time is marked. And now, what are we going to do with it? What are we going to become? You've been
Yeah.
given this opportunity. So, I look at it as opportunity. And one of the things that you also wrote in your blog, when you're sitting in those reading circles
Hmm.
with little plastic chairs and
Oh.
a round table with a book full of stories that your brain cannot dissect,
Hmm.
you'll be okay. Your
Yeah.
word count may feel like the biggest deal right now, and it will get better, a lot better, but there is so much more to you than how efficiently you read a sentence.
Yeah.
And that's your person with disabilities, with differences, however you want to say it, that's
Hmm.
talking right there. And you want to like go back and say, you know what? You got this. That's so cool.
It's so, it needs to be said more often because, it's the education system, parents, everyone in children's lives, we all have these ideas of what
Hmm.
success is supposed to look like, where we're supposed to be,
Yep.
what markers we're supposed to be hitting at what age and at what grade
Mm.
level. And it puts so much pressure, even if it's unknown, even if we're saying it's okay, there's still this kind of invisible force field of like, I'm not where I'm supposed to be. The other students are doing this and I'm not. Like, and so,
I did that.
oh yeah, I think that children with dyslexia, with learning differences, like it's something that we do that we're just constantly holding ourselves to a standard that we might not be able to reach, but we have so many things that are our strengths. And so talking about those strengths and figuring them out, like for me, it's visual and being like, this is how I learn and this is how I learn best. So going into college, going into my careers, it's saying like, I'm visual. If you hand me a book and tell me to read it, I
Mhm.
will not understand the context. I can read much better, but I will not understand and I will not intake that. If you have a book on
Mhm.
tape, if you have a video, if there's a YouTube, I can do an oil change, no problem. I got it. Like, I'm, what I am woman, hear me roar. Like, I will take care of myself. I will Google how to change my tire real fast and I will figure it out. You give me the manual on the car, not a hope in the world. I will not. Unless there's pictures, then whole nother story.
Well, when I was a kid and I knew my kindergarten teacher went to my parents and said, something's not right. Just something's not right. And yeah, I wasn't learning like the other kids and things like that. And then the neurologists and everything. And they're like, yeah, no, she probably won't graduate high school,
Mhm.
is what we heard. And when you hear things like that, and I think my parents did a good job of this too. I mean, you just don't let educators and medical people define your path and
Mhm.
let you know, hey, I mean, you got a GED, which is
Mhm.
absolutely amazing, and your path was a little different, but I think that that is so great that you did that. I mean, that really touched me, and it's an amazing feat that you
Mhm.
took on being a writer, by the way, with dyslexia. And it
Yeah.
is so interesting because I had someone on my podcast recently, and she said that our hard things become our heart things.
Mhm.
And that is so true. The things I have struggled through the most are the very things that I use now to help me and others go through life's journeys.
Yes, I love that. It's so true. It's finding that strength. And it's like because we dug ourselves out of that hole, because we overcame something that was difficult, we learned so much and we're able to help others and we're able to really skyrocket ourselves. I mean, that momentum that we had to figure those things out, it really is a self-motivator to be like, okay. And my dad mentioned it to me after Melonade came out that in the book, we have the word superpower. And on the back of the book, we have the word superpower. And
Hmm.
one of those is one word and one of them is two. And I said, well, they're both correct. So that's just a little dyslexic moment where I didn't have them completely perfect. They both are spelled correctly. One is just together and one is not. But we will just leave
No,
that
I think that
up
that's
to the
great
reader.
because I'm a writer and
Mhm.
Tina and I often, we work together a lot of times on the podcast, of course. But she'll send me, I'll put something out and she'll say, well, do you know that this was wrong or this was, and I'm like, well, there you go. I'm allowed to have
Mhm.
these mess ups. And I, as you are, I'm sure, very proud of where I am. And if I have a word or two wrong, I did amazing.
Mhm.
And I am proud that, because I mean, I put together all these amazing things as you have, and we have all these neurological differences that really do stand in our way, but we created this tool belt of things to be able to figure it out.
Exactly. Yeah. And it is such an accomplishment to be able to say, I did this, we're doing it. Like, this is awesome. It's something that I never thought I would do. I sent it to my English teacher, my 10th grade English teacher.
Oh, that's great.
And so I actually reconnected with my high school, who I previously did not have the greatest,
Mm.
adios with when I was in 11th grade, but we're now on great terms and they actually have the book in their library.
Oh, that's so
And I was so
awesome.
excited about
Yes.
it. And I also
Yes.
had a 6th grade teacher who works at a completely different school. And I actually made a video responding to her students about my dyslexia for them about my book with dyslexia. And it was such a full circle moment with
See,
education because
that's
I
so
was just
great.
like, I wasn't voted to be, an author or the next president of the United States. I was voted for a lot less. And I was grateful that I overcame those things, but also it was a little bit of like a look at me now. Like,
Absolutely.
don't
Yeah,
underestimate ever. And I don't know if you ever watch Miss Rachel.
I don't.
She's a mother. She has a YouTube. She had a child who was speech delayed, and she did
Oh,
an interview recently where she said, "Never underestimate a mother trying to help their children." And
ooh,
I was like,
ooh,
"Ooh, love that." Never
yeah.
underestimate a mother in general. Like we will, my husband was undiagnosed, but he's ADHD and most likely dyslexic, and I'm dyslexic. And biologically, that means that my children have almost a 100% chance of being dyslexic.
Mm,
Because with one parent, it's 55%, and with two, it's almost 100. So I was like, well, I guess we need to write a book for my children because even if they're the smartest little Alex and they don't have dyslexia, I'm sure they will have friends that are dyslexic and their mom and dad are probably are dyslexic. So we need to spread awareness. And I think, again, that goes back to adoption, where if you make something normal in your house, it's normal. And so if you
oh,
talk
that's
about
good.
learning differences, if you talk about big emotions, if you talk about adoption, it's normal. It's not this crazy weird afterthought. And so I think as parents, that's our job, is to make these things normal for our children, so that even if you're raising biological children, if you talk about adoption with them, when they have a friend that's adopted in school or they meet someone at the park, they know. And they'll be like, oh,
Mhm.
that's your mom and dad. Because I had so
Right.
many friends ask me, well, do you know your real mom and dad? I'm like, that is my real mom and dad. My
Hmm.
biological parents, yes, I know them, but that's my real mom and dad. So
The
it's like just talking about them and letting them know, even at a young age, being like, hey, like, you know, mom's biological mom, she lives here, and this is mom, this is grandma. But it's like
hmm
just making it
hmm
normal. And it's like having these normal conversations. It's dust bunnies. It's, hey, we clean up, we're gonna find the dust bunnies. It's boats in the kitchen. It's postpartum depression. It's, mommies and daddies are superheroes, and superheroes have big feelings sometimes, and that's okay. And you have big feelings sometimes, and nothing will ever like make it so I don't love you or I don't accept you or that I'm not your mom. And that's, a universal thing for adoptive parents, for biological parents. It's just, I'm your mom. You can do nothing that makes me that I'm not your mom anymore. There'll be times when mommy is angry, there's times when mommy is sad, but I am your mom and you are mine and I love you and I am here and I'm holding your hand as we walk through the door, and nothing will change that. So feel all the feels, ask all the questions, like I'm here.
You might be dyslexic, but you speak very eloquently and you put your words together very well.
Thank you. I had a lot of therapy when I was younger, so I think that has a lot to do with it. My parents
Oh,
were very concerned about my emotional growth, so they had me in DBT therapy, which gave me
oh.
a lot of skills that I've taken into adulthood and have also shared with my husband. And whether he says he'll use them or not, he is using them regularly.
But I think that that's great that you have all those skills and you can tell that you do.
Thank you.
And it sounds like your parents did an amazing job, that they're really beautiful people.
They are really, really great, really selfless people, and they they did their best, just like you are, and that's all I can ask of them. And I can look back and say that they did their best. And there are things that we talk about today that my mom says, I wish I would have done better with this, or I wish. And I said, well, you did your
Oh,
best. You didn't
yeah.
know. You didn't
Yeah.
know what I was going to do. You didn't know how I was going to turn out. You didn't know that a trip to DC would alter my, way to college. You had no
Um,
idea. If we
right.
did, if there was a manual, I'm sure we would all buy it, but there's not. So
Yeah, I mean, we just do our best.
we do.
So, and I do really love that you don't know what the path is going to be, but you know what? It's our path to make. And
Yeah.
we might mess up along the way, but here we are. And everything is a stepping stone to where we're going. I say that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
they told me that I wouldn't be able, like I said, to learn. And I can remember my 10th grade teacher, when you were talking about teachers, I
Mm-hmm.
remember my 10th grade teacher telling me, she stopped me. She's like, Ann, wait a second. So I stood there before I left the classroom. She's like, why does everybody in the classroom take notes but you?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, I don't know. But I didn't know at the time. In hindsight, I really understand everything that I became in school and why I was so complicated and why I didn't have I had a teacher at a reunion show up decades later and I was like, "Oh, hi." And they said, "Oh, yeah, you had a lot of problems."
Thanks. I know.
I'm so glad that I could be that memory for you.
I know.
I
I'm so happy.
But he wasn't wrong, and I had a really bad relationship with my education system, I guess you could say. And speaking of what we want for our kids, because I know my kids too, are on a different path. And I'm glad that I had that. I'm glad that I had that because now I know what it feels like to be that kid in that system and to
Mhm.
be lost, not understand what's going on in the classroom, having to look around to understand even the basic directions and not understanding the text on the page.
Mhm.
And I'm not doing it on purpose.
Mhm. No.
And I want my kids to have that freedom to be able to advocate for themselves, be able to
Mhm.
say, look, I don't get it. I need more helps here or whatever. And that we get to, as parents, come to the table with these meetings with these educators, and now we get to advocate for them.
Yeah, and it's so true. And there's so many things that we learned from our own experiences. Like for me, audiobooks were really big. So I'm already in my head like,
Yeah.
okay, instead of, watching a movie or TV or whatever while mom makes dinner, we're going to listen to your book because
Mm.
that's how we're going to intake information. And if that's what you need to do, we're going to read these stories together and we're going to listen to them. And we can
Yeah.
have conversations where they really stay. And like that's what I used to do in college is I would listen to my books to and from school. And I even took a class at a farther location. It was like 45 minutes for me versus the 20-minute because it gave me more time to listen.
See what we do?
Mm-hmm.
Because I would get a tape recorder, read into it,
Mm-hmm.
listen to it,
Yep.
take notes from what I was hearing,
Mm-hmm.
and because I needed all the things, I needed to see it, hear it, write it in order for me to be able to comprehend. And it would take me hours to do what my roommates and, friends, it would take them an hour to do. But
Mm-hmm.
I was willing to do it because it was
Yeah.
really important.
It was. And that's all we can do is we figure out those ways around of how to figure it out and figure out what works best for us. I mean, I know the education system is working, to be better and better every single year to
Hmm.
accommodate
Yeah.
and to have better accommodation services and have
Yeah,
classrooms. But I
they
mean,
do.
teachers are just exhausted. I have so much respect for teachers. I mean, they're
Oh,
they're with our
absolutely.
children 30 plus hours a week. I mean, Could not ask for more.
And our school system opened a
Mm-hmm.
school within the public school
Mm.
just for kids in the gap, like my kids. So
Wow.
two of my kids go to this school where there's like three teachers, six kids per
Mm.
classroom,
That's phenomenal.
and they are working on that with them one-on-one because they don't want them to get lost in a
Yeah.
bigger environment. And I so appreciate that.
Yeah. I went to the Lab School of Washington, which is specifically for dyslexia. And so we had very small classrooms as well.
Oh,
I believe like 9 to 12 students per two teachers, teacher and a teacher's aide, but they are extraordinary with visuals and with learning
see,
differences. I
so
remember
important.
in history, instead of learning about the Mona Lisa, we painted it. And that's such a
Mm,
core memory because I don't exactly remember every single detail about him, but I remember painting the Mona Lisa. And I
that's
remember
so,
dressing up like they would dress up in their cloaks and in their robes. And I remember, and I just think if I had read that in a book, I would have no idea. But because I
mm,
physically did it, and it's
the
so much fun.
hands-on.
Like I would love to paint the Mona Lisa with my kids when they get older. I would love to
Mm-hmm,
do that versus reading a history book. It just sounds so much more enjoyable. It's like
mm-hmm.
instead of, learning what measurements are on a piece of paper, it's like let's bake a cake. Like let's measure that. Let's do things
Yes.
for memories, and then let's put a half cup scoop in each cupcake. And what happens if we put a cup? What happens if we cut a fourth cup? And it's like, what does that look like? And now we can eat cupcakes. Like there
Yeah,
are fun
yeah,
ways to learn, and there are things
yeah.
that we can do, and educators, and but as their parents, we're just advocating for them as best as we can. And even in with your children's school, I'm sure there's so much advocating that you still do as their mom.
I do.
Yeah.
And we also travel. We went to 16 states this summer,
Oh,
and
that's amazing.
I want my kids to go into the museums. I want
Mhm.
that. We took them to NASA. They got in the rockets. They saw all the launching pad firsthand. I mean, we do all the things
Mhm.
because my kids are very visual. They are very hands-on learning. And we went to this one museum where, and we have one here locally, but this was really something where they go and there's like a fake restaurant and there's a fake kitchen and there's a fake fire truck and but I mean they're real.
Mhm.
It's as real could be for them,
Mhm.
and they're making the food and we're sitting there and they're serving us and they're like going in the fire truck and all that stuff. So, and going in the supermarket, and they're going shopping and checking out, and I mean it's just so fun, and those are the things that they're going to remember.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, we did trips this summer. We drove from Virginia to Vermont. We went to North Carolina. We drove all the way through, museums. There were like boats that were on land that we were able to walk around that were from the early 1900s that had all of the
Yeah.
gold, and, you could steer the ship and go to the aquarium
Yeah.
with the huge shark teeth. My son was in awe at the sharks. I mean, like
Mm-hmm.
nothing else. It's being like tactile learners where they can really get their
Yes.
hands into it is just it's so crazy because when you hear these stories of children, and even like myself, and I don't know if you experience it, where you just feel stupid or you feel dumb, like you can't learn, and you
Most of
maybe
my life.
children that have these thoughts, or that the teachers are coming at you like with, oh, well, maybe they're not going to graduate, maybe they're not. But then you see them in these other environments where they're intaking so much knowledge and they're so smart, and oh, this is this type of dirt, this is sedimentary, like these
Right.
are where the word, and it's like, how did you just learn all that? And it's like
Mm-hmm.
they're smart, and it's like just because you learn in a different way in a different environment does not mean anything.
Well,
Like,
I
mhm,
homeschool one of my kids
mhm,
because this is just what he needs. And
yeah,
that's what we have to do is meet them where they are.
yeah,
But I mean, his favorite thing is the Titanic. So we went to the Titanic Museum,
love
and
that.
we've been to three actually, but the one especially where he got to steer the ship and you try to avoid the iceberg, and they do all the things, but
Mhm,
you just can't have a regular conversation with this kid. I mean, he would not make it in the school system, but he can have a very adult conversation with any adult, and
mhm,
he can tell you all the facts about everything. So,
yeah,
I mean, yeah, it's so fun.
I love that. Yeah, every child I've met with a learning disability or disability of some kind always have like their thing. that they're so good at.
Mm-hmm.
And I love
Mm-hmm.
talking to parents about their children's thing because people who aren't as exposed are sometimes unaware. So I've met people at the playground, and my son's been playing with a child who's clearly either on the spectrum, and they'll come up to me and they'll say, "Oh, well, they're nonverbal." I'm like, "Oh, well, what's like their thing they're great at?" And they're like, "Oh, well, they really love history." And then they'll just get into it. And it's like you see them light up because their child is being heard and their needs are being met. And it's like, that's okay. Like, thank you for letting me know. I'll make sure my son knows that he might not verbally respond, but like they're playing. They're playing in the sandbox. They got boats. They're hanging out. Like they're having a grand old time. Like love it. Like exposure, make it normal. Make it
Yeah, make it normal. You
make
said
it
that
normal.
earlier, and
Hmm.
I love that. If you make it normal, I mean, it's just normal.
It's just
I just,
normal. It's just the world. People are different. People look
oh,
different, sound different, act different. Some people need wheelchairs. Some people don't have a leg. It's like, you know, it's okay. Like it's
there's
normal.
nothing
It's the
wrong with it.
world. You know, it's what was it?
Mm-mm.
There's a quote that says, "You could be the juiciest peach in the world, and there's someone out there that doesn't like peaches." But it's like, there's no perfect. There's no normal. We're all human. We're all different, and that's what's normal. That we're different, and that's beautiful, and that all families are different, and that's beautiful. Like some people have a nice house with their one dog and their one cat and their gerbil and two kids and a white picket fence yard, and you don't know what's going on inside that house. You have no idea
Oh,
what mom does, what dad does, what's going on, how they got to the relationship, the raves that
right.
mom went to, the corporate events. Like, you have no idea. And it's like, stop trying to act like everyone else. Just be you, do you, be unique, be cool. The world needs more of it, and make it normal.
I love that. I love your words with everything that you say. Do you have anything else coming up? How can people contact you?
Yeah, I'm currently working on a book actually about divorce.
Oh,
I'm a
okay.
child of divorce, and I think that it's another important topic that I want to talk about, as well as like advocating for children. So I'm writing a book that has a child that has parents going through a divorce in different
Mm,
situations. But at the end of the book, it has questions that that child has that your child might have, so that it can prompt
mm.
conversations that parents might not be thinking about, or that can open up communication with their children during the adoption process or during the divorce process. And my hope is that both families would have the book because it ends with saying goodnight to their other parent so that when they're separated from them, there's this unified front of it's okay to talk about your other parent, just like in adoption. It's okay. Like just because we didn't work out doesn't mean that they're not your mom and not your dad anymore.
Mhm,
It's
mhm.
okay. And so it's been difficult because it is such a heavy, hard topic, and it is a little bit more of a glass half empty. So it's been a struggle to make it a half full with while still allowing for those difficult emotions to be represented and that it is a difficult situation. But that will be coming out in 2025. And so I'm looking forward to it. It's been hard, but I have again a lot of input from my family, from friends who are, children of divorce, who are divorced themselves with children. And so I want to make it normal. I want to make the conversations normal in households. And if I can help start those conversations, then that's all I could ask for. And so that's what I'm doing next year. That's the beginning.
That's great. I mean, your books, and I've read books with adoption and different things, but your books hit me different. So I loved how you put it together.
Mhm.
And just like with the divorce thing or with being adopted, there's so much shame and blame that goes around. And I just love that your books kind of unify everything. It just kind of brings in a level playing field for everybody. It's really cool.
Yeah, I think our idea visually with this book is it's going to be animals. That way, different family dynamics can be represented. That way, it can tell a story of these
Mhm.
animals going through this divorce, but anyone can see themselves in them. So it again can be a little bit more of a universal thing with universal situations. And I have gotten input because I have siblings. My dad biologically had children before him and my mom adopted me. And so I've talked to them about their experience, which was very different from mine with their divorce, with their mom and dad, and the divorce of my mom and dad. So it's um it's really a beautiful thing that I've been given the gift to be able to experience other people's experiences because it really has opened up my world as well, where I was aware of other people's situations, but it's connected me more with my siblings, seeing where they came
Mhm.
from and seeing how our father maybe wasn't present with them, but was with me, and how that made them feel as his biological children. And even though there was an awareness, I had never heard it from them. So I think that's been a really powerful thing that's come from writing these books and hearing other people's stories and meeting you and hearing your stories and your children. And I think it's a really beautiful gift that these books have given me.
Yeah, I think it's great that you're so open to everybody where they are.
Mhm.
You're just okay with it. And that's, I think that that's a huge message in this
Mhm.
podcast and speaking with you is just how beautifully you're able to meet with everybody right where they are and you're okay and you don't need them to change to be something else to be able to have a connection with them. You're just okay with them
Mhm.
being them. That is so great. What a great message that we could all have right now, right?
It is. It's so great. And it's also that it's okay if the world doesn't love you. You know, the people in your life love you. You love yourself. You have to be really secure with yourself. There'll be days that you're not, but it's okay to let go of relationships. It's okay to have new relationships. It's okay to outgrow ones or grow in a different direction with people.
Mhm,
And it is a loss and you can feel that loss, but that's part
mhm,
of growing. You know,
mhm,
I know there are people in my life who have come into my life and then left it, but they left their mark. They left part of their journey with me, and
mhm,
I'm grateful
mhm,
for that. And I think that
mhm,
that's something that, like you said, it's accepting people where they're at. That's an acknowledgement where I want people to meet me where I'm at. And so that means that I have to be able to do the same. And that's like a reflection in of, you know, if I'm having a hard day, I need to acknowledge that to my husband, to my friends of right now I'm here and I'm sorry, it's not about you. This is a me thing, but I'm letting you know this is where I am. And so today this is I'm at a 20, I'm not at 100. And then the next day, okay, I'm at an 80 and maybe you're at a 30 and I'm going to meet you where you are and I got you. And it's acknowledging that and being aware of that. And then if people aren't, it's okay to say, okay, well, I understand you can't meet me where I'm at, but that's what I need in my life right now because I'm a mom and I'm working and I'm exhausted and I'm doing all these things. And that's okay. And you're going to have your life and I'm going to have mine. And that's okay. There's no ill will. There's no anything. It's just we have two different lives that don't seem to intermesh the way our lives need to right now. And maybe
mhm,
they will one day and maybe they won't. And that's okay. It's
mhm,
okay. We have full lives and it's you don't have to be a people pleaser all the time. You can do what's best for you and your family and the people that are meant to be a part of that journey fall into place. And you'll put the work in where other people put the work in and you'll meet each other where you need to and so forth.
Giving yourself permission.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, I think that's so great. I don't think that that little girl that sat in those circles, not being able to read
Mm-mm.
the way everybody else could in the classroom, could see herself doing these things today.
Not
So
at all.
I just think, that is a testament to, and that should allow any other kid that is out there right now, or even an adult who's having some of the same struggles that, look, you can do it too. Look what Sasha has done, and you're doing absolutely amazing. So thank you so absolutely much. Can anybody get in contact with you on your website, or how would you
Yeah,
like
my
people?
website, sashasaidman.com, and then I have an Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok that are all under Sasha Saidman, so people can always message me there. My email is sasha@sashasaidman.com, so people can always email me there, and we can chat, we can connect, we can, meet each other where we're at.
That's so beautiful. Well, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this conversation with you, Sasha.
Thank you. No, this was great. I had such a great time hearing your story and sharing mine.
And for our listeners, thank you so much for joining us and listening to her story. And I get out there and read her books because they are absolutely amazing. And the illustrations are they're put together so beautifully with this story. So, anyway, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time.